Hey there. Thanks for joining us for Tales of Misadventure, a podcast all about business blunders. On this podcast, Nicole Donnelly, founder of DMG Digital, talks to entrepreneurs and learns how they turn their lemons into lemonade. DMG Digital is a full-service marketing agency focused on helping manufacturers attract new buyers through digital self-serve. Nicole Donnelly is a fourth-generation entrepreneur, a girl mom, and an avid traveler. Now, let's head into a tale of misadventure with your host, Nicole Donnelly.
Hi, good morning. Welcome to Tales of Misadventure, where we talk about entrepreneurial blunders, mishaps, mistakes, and failures. I'm Nicole Donnelly. I'm the founder of DMG Digital, a marketing agency made for manufacturers. I am so excited and delighted to be joined today by Brian Leung. And Brian is a serial entrepreneur and owner operator of SwiftAds.io and Treebud. SwiftAds.io was created to help advertisers 10 times their revenue by automating the ad creation plus campaign monitoring and optimization. Treebud Media is a full-service digital marketing agency. Brian's mission is to reach and help 1,000 small businesses improve or start their online advertising so more people can learn about their business and ultimately grow their business. Welcome to the show, Brian. It's so nice to have you on. And I just have to say how much I love your mission. It speaks to me as a small business owner, as a fourth generation small business owner. My dad, my grandfather, my great grandfather all built and owned small businesses. So I have to say, I love the work that you're doing. It's super inspiring and super needed. There's so many small business owners out there who need this kind of help and support. So thank you for what you do. And thank you for joining our show.
Hey, thanks for having me. And I always tell people kind of like the genesis story of what SwiftAds is, and it stems from like me running an agency and recognizing not everyone can afford to hire me or other freelancers. As a small business owner, cash flow might be tight here and there. But I still want to help them grow because I saw how my dad struggled with his business. My uncle was very successful on the other hand, and to a point like they weren't still able to grow their businesses because they weren't able to tap into like good marketing understanding personas, for example. So I'm on a
Yes.
mission to change that because it's kind of cathartic for me to help
Mm.
the little boy in me that couldn't help my dad or my uncle
Oh.
can now go out and help other people with what I know now.
Oh, I love that. And I bet your dad is so proud of you. He must just be so excited to see you do what you're doing. I'd love to hear about that. Does he
Yeah,
like
he as with most Chinese, like very traditional Chinese men,
Mhm.
the most approval I've ever gotten from him is like a smile and a nod, and him acknowledging the fact that oh, my son's doing better than me, and that's sort of like the peak of approval and kind of acceptance. But
Oh.
this is I cherish those tiny little moments.
Yes. You do, right? Right, with your parents, you do. I know my dad was very similar. He wasn't one to give a lot of praise or affirmation. So, you take it when you can get it, and you
Oh yeah,
just learn that you just gotta give it to yourself, right? You just gotta give it to yourself. Very cool. Well, thanks for joining our show today. We are talking all about business blunders, entrepreneurial mishaps, and we want to kind of like take out the stigma, right? Like
hmm
failure is a part of life, and I think I'm on a mission to try to encourage any aspiring entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs out there to understand and know that mistakes are going to happen and we need to look at them as opportunities. And I think being able to have entrepreneurs come on the show and talk about some of their blunders and how they actually turned into huge opportunities and how they bounced back is something I'm hugely excited and passionate about to have this conversation with you today. So let's go ahead and kick it off, and let's just start off with a little bit of like, tell me a little bit about Brian, and I want our guests to know a little bit about who you are and what drives you. So if you could spend your day doing whatever you wanted, wherever you wanted, what would you do?
So I'm often people mistaken me for being a very introverted person for work for when I clock in, right? I
Yes.
put on a very high energy persona and try to be as infectious as possible with my energy, as you may see right now. But I'm
Mhm.
actually very much introverted. to the chagrin of my wife. Um, I'm the type of person who would, give me an internet connection and I can stay at home, like not even like set a step outside of the house for like days or sometimes even weeks on end, and I'll be perfectly happy. No
Yeah.
interaction with human beings, and I, just have my cat with me, for example. Right now,
Yeah.
like with a baby, I'd love to spend my time with him.
Mhm.
My favorite thing to do is just go on a bike ride. And I live near the lake, so I ride along the
Mm.
lake on the harbor, and then there's like a little nook, kind of like a small hidden beach. I mean, I use the word beach very loosely compared to like Sydney and LA and all those other places, but we do have a little tiny beach. And I plop down, do my emails, read, and that's sort of like my favorite thing to do in the world, especially in the mornings.
Mm. I love it. That's so awesome. I am an extrovert, like true extrovert in the biggest sense of the word, but I really cherish alone time too. And
Hmm.
I think it surprises a lot of people that like sometimes I really just want to be on my own and do exactly what you just did. Just sit and read and just decompress. And sometimes I just like to just go outside and just lay on the grass and not even do anything. It's just so nice. So I love that. That's awesome. And okay, tell me something surprising most people wouldn't know about you.
I'm actually fairly like I take a lot of risk when it comes to business,
Mhm.
and a lot of calculated risk, and that's also kind of seen in my hobbies. I love rock climbing. Um,
Okay.
and I have like this strange relationship with fear of heights, where I
Oh.
there are moments where I'm deathly afraid of heights, especially you're a couple, maybe like 50, 60 feet off the ground. You look down and you're like, oh, this is kind of scary. Um, but there are moments where like I'm just sitting, hanging on the rope, and then just loving every moment of it. So it comes and goes. It's weird. Um, but yeah, a lot of people, when they learn more about what rock climbing is, they'll realize, oh yeah, that's like a direct um, correlation with being a business owner or entrepreneur.
I was absolutely just gonna say that because I think as entrepreneurs, sometimes we're like gluttons for punishment. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know about you, but I love the challenge of it. And sometimes it's just so hard, but that's what I love about it. Like, is the hard part, the fact that you do have to do things scared. You have to embrace the discomfort and the uncertainty. And it's like such a beautiful, I think, push and pull, if you will, that makes it so exciting. So I love to hear that
Mhm.
you love to rock climb, but that you have a fear of heights at the same time. Like
Yep.
that really speaks a lot to you're also being a serial entrepreneur as well. So very cool. Awesome. Okay, so when did you first know? It sounds like you were inspired by your dad and your uncle um,
Mhm.
to really get started, and that's what you wanted to do. Is it something you always wanted to do, even when you were a little kid? Was to be a business owner? Is it did it kind of come to you over time?
I think something that is the foundation of my entrepreneurial spirit is to growing up, we weren't very well off. We
Mhm.
lived in like looking back, that you started to realize, oh, it wasn't because what we thought was normal, like growing up, my sister and I, what we thought was normal was just us being dirt poor. And looking back, like we realized how poor we were. Um,
Oh man.
uh, and it was just, I think the idea of being able to break that cycle, right? Because
Mhm.
my parents were
Yeah.
first generation immigrants. They had no education. Growing up, they had to pick up odd jobs. And the only way for them to kind of break out of that was to start their own business.
Yeah.
And them, my father in particular, like starting businesses, failing, starting again, etc. All of that kind of inspired me to understand a bit more of like how one can succeed given our circumstances.
Mhm.
And to be quite honest, when I was younger, I was just very motivated by just making more money, and being able to provide financially for my parents, because you know
Mhm.
um, for as an immigrant, there are very few opportunities for them to, for example, save up for retirement, right? So now
Yeah.
the onus is on my sister and I to kind of still be able to provide for them in
Yeah.
their later days.
I love that. And I think it just speaks as a testament to you about how much you love and value family and the commitment that you have to your parents and the love that you have for them. I think that's so amazing. So very cool. Um, and I love that you're keeping that legacy alive. You know, your father and your uncle being entrepreneurs and really trying to kind of drive that forward. My father was a successful entrepreneur also, my grandfather, my great
Hmm.
grandfather. So I feel like it's in my blood. Like it's this legacy that I have to honor and like kind of move the ball forward. And so I just have always, from the time I was young, just been super curious also and
Hmm.
interested in starting a business because I saw the direct positive impact that it had on so many people and lives. Very cool. So let's see. Let's talk a little bit about let's talk a little bit about some of your biggest failures. Okay. Maybe if I want to, let's just like, let's have story time, if you will, a little bit. Let's sit down and have a story, like open up the book. I'm pretend I'm your wonderful son, Asher, and you're reading him a bedtime story. Okay. And tell me a story about an experience that you had in one of your businesses that was just when everything was going wrong, you know, and everything was falling apart and
Hmm.
you had to figure out what to do with that failure. Walk us through what happened? What was the failure? What led to it? And let's do a little once upon a time.
Yeah. So once graduated, I was fortunate. So funny enough, I graduated in the financial crisis, but I was
Oh yeah.
fortunate enough to be hired right out of school. So I was in a much better position than a lot of my peers. Um,
Mhm.
and then a bunch of my friends, like I have a biochem background, so
Uh-huh.
I went to school for biochem and business, and half of my friends are really successful like consultants
Mhm.
in like big firms, big they're accountants, they're like junior partners and whatnot, and then half my friends are doctors and literally doing research on curing cancer, um, and I felt a bit inadequate having like
Mm.
gone down like a route of being a marketer compared to like all my accountant and finance friends.
You're like
And
saving lives and,
yeah,
and you're just like trying to help people, make more money.
yep. And it was
Yeah.
like the case of like grass is always greener, but that's a
Mhm.
story for another time. Um,
Yeah.
my first venture was I worked with a few of my friends that were still in school
Mhm.
for filmmaking, and I knew how difficult it was to break into the filmmaking industry. And as an artist and students, they were in a position where there was no capital basically for them to start their projects. So
Mhm.
I kind of stepped in, having I was still at home. Um, I still had a bit of student debt, but then there was like that grace period where there's zero interest, so 0% interest, and I was already working, earning decent salary coming out of school. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna help my friends out and
Mhm.
fund some of the projects. And it was just a lot of work. It was just basically pouring thousands of dollars. And in hindsight, um, a- at the time, if it didn't like it was a lot of money, it felt bad. But then in the grand scheme of things, it's like, oh, that was money well spent. Um, but yeah, that the when you're young, you feel invincible and you feel like everything. And I think those were
So
kind of
true.
like the biggest things. Like we're like gung ho. We're like, you know what? We're gonna do this. We're gonna break down all the barriers, carve our own path, and you know, reality. It We butted heads against reality, right?
And what was
Um,
that reality? What happened? So you invested all this money in this it was a product, right? Tell us a little bit about, specifically about what this money was being invested in and what it was going to do.
so it was a lot of hiring talent.
Yep.
Um, Getting the correct equipment. So I'm a sticker for like quality equipment,
Mhm.
um, and a lot of yeah, I'll be honest, like there was some legal stuff involved because like we had to make sure the contracts were correct. Some of the contracts weren't correct because we were like copying and pasting off of things like we found on the internet, and this was like more than 10 years ago, right? So it's like the search engines weren't as powerful as they are now. So a lot of like trial and error.
Mhm.
The money went into several different projects that didn't get off the ground, and
Mm.
the biggest thing I learned through that is um, nothing replaces experience in any field.
So true.
One, you always hear about like the stories of people like they dropped out, 19 years old, they're running $1 million companies, but there's something to be said about CEOs being much much older than 19, right? And having that business acumen, having that like like in the trenches type of experience. So nothing replaces that, and that was a very hard lesson to learn.
Mhm.
And quite rightly, it put me in on a path of like much more humility and
Mm.
learning that I can learn from everyone.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And you're so right about that. I think there's actually research that shows that people who start businesses, like there's this idea that, founders who start in their early 20s are usually more successful, right? They started young and they're brilliant or whatever, but actually the reverse is true.
Hmm.
The real data shows that, founders who start later in life, who start after they've had some of those hard knocks and those real life experiences, actually tend to be more successful than the ones that are starting out young and
Absolutely.
so that's so cool. I love that story. So when you did your next venture, right? Like, so it sounded like you had invested all this money in this company and all of these, this equipment and services, and it didn't go right. What went wrong about it? Was it just not the right market fit? Did you make some assumptions on who was going to actually want to buy this, what was it that went wrong that you were like, okay, this is a complete bomb?
I think so our first our most successful project was a dating advice show on
Uh-huh.
YouTube, and this was
Oh.
like 10 um 10 to 12 years ago.
Mhm.
In So 2010, so yeah, 12 years ago. Um and this was like way before any like type of scripted shows were popular on YouTube. And what I think was it's a bit of timing and also
Mhm.
our inexperience, not
Mm.
knowing how much grit and commitment it takes to keep a project like that going,
Mm.
especially with multiple moving parts. So we had four talent to manage: a camera person, my friend, and me, and then a few other people who were handling the administration. And this was like I was not even 25. So like all these things were kind of like the marketplace was I think we were a bit ahead of the game.
Mm. Mhm.
And we just were too young to stick it out.
Mm.
And then of course bills had to be paid.
Yep.
Some of the talents moved on to different projects because it paid more than what we were able to afford. And life just got busier for a few of us, and then it just fell to the wayside. If I were to do it again, um, I would have probably hired someone or worked with a mentor that had way more experience than me. Because like
Mhm.
again, like nothing replaces experience, and having someone who is a steady hand, who is a veteran in the space, an expert in the space, guide me or guide the ship, would have made an entire world of difference.
Oh, that's such a great point. I love what you say there about mentorship. That is so, so huge to find someone who's been down the path before and they can help you down it. I know I've been blessed with so many mentors in my career that have
Hmm.
done that for me. Just like really brilliant marketers who have, taught me more than I could have ever learned on my own, even with my own resourcefulness, from their experience, right?
Hmm.
Their experience is a great teacher. And is if you're young and you're wanting to be an entrepreneur and you want to jump in, take advantage of the experiences that mentors can provide for you. Find someone
Hmm.
who's done what you've done and gone down that path and really use it. And frankly, like they want to help,
Mhm.
people love to help and to be helpful. So if it's in your job, make sure you're making time to get that mentorship or even outside of it. I think that's really great advice. And it sounds like too, like funding is a big thing, right? Like making sure that the project is funded well enough so that you're not in this position where you're having to make like really tough, quick decisions. You have the bandwidth to kind of like run with it, more runway, if you will. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
very cool. Love that. And what was the impact that decision made? So it sounds like you shut down that business. It was not working. So what did you take from it? What was the like nugget that you took to your next venture to kind of help that be more successful, if you will?
I think being patient was an aspect of it, and
Mhm.
understanding when things are right. So, as entrepreneurs, you have to trust your gut a lot, your instincts, and I think there is a huge element of there's like the two sides of that coin where you trust your instincts, which involves a lot of confidence, but you should also be like humble and enough to understand, like get signals from people and be willing to listen to people, because that should balance that has to balance out that the risk aspect. So timing and being more patient is are two things, because of I I had the gut feeling that it was the right thing to do. So time and time again, as I look back and kind of reflect on all my past ventures, I knew each time I started that the timing was right. um, but often, all of these ventures, I rushed into it, due to maybe lack of experience, naivete, or just sheer overconfidence, um, which
Which
helped
is
me
not a bad thing, right? Like,
exactly
you
right, right,
have
right,
to be confident. You have to be, you
exactly.
have to believe in what it is that you're offering. And it
But just
sounds
having
like
a healthy dose of like humility, healthy dose of like self doubt as well. Just not so much that you're like absolutely anxious or neurotic about everything, but yeah, I get your point.
yeah, but you know what's interesting about that is it's almost like those failures do humble you. So
Hmm.
over time, the mistakes that you make, those are humbling, and it's that kind of like feeds into like the future choices that you make because you get that humility from being
Yeah,
knocked down over and over again. So when you step up the next time, you're going to come into it with a lot more patience, humility, etc. So
exactly.
I think that's interesting because it sounds like you said looking back your instincts told you that you should do this. It's almost like even though you made these big mistakes and the first venture didn't go well, it still was the right choice for you because it took you and led you to the next one, right? So looking
Yes.
back, it wasn't like, oh man, I should have never done this, it was a complete failure, why did I waste my time? It's more like that experience led me to this next opportunity, which is what led me to this next opportunity. So looking at it in that positive mindset of like, what can you learn? Almost like an after action review, like the Navy SEALs do, right?
Hmm.
Like, what went well? What didn't go well? What can we learn next time? If you can like kind of bake that into everything that you do as an entrepreneur, it turns it from being this like really negative, oh my gosh, into this is all just part of the process of life and learning.
Hmm.
And what can I do to take this to the next big thing? So very cool. Okay, so I would love to know what do you think is your biggest shortcoming and how do you manage it? Because as entrepreneurs, we're not good at everything. We're, it's if only, right? If only we could just be
Hmm.
perfect and do everything perfectly. So, what do you see as your biggest shortcomings and what do you do to manage them?
So it's funny, which actually ties into my second venture and what I've learned
Mm,
from that experience is the second venture I went into is also film adjacent, but now more into the marketing sphere. I went into a project to help market and joined the team to market this documentary. And I
mm,
was really, really bad at networking
mhm,
and building up um, like knowing whom to tap and whom to talk to uh, for the right resources at the right time and maintaining those relationships. So
mm,
this was maybe 2014, 2015,
mhm,
right around that period of time. I was very, very involved with the startup community here in Toronto.
mm,
Some of the you know most well-known startups from Toronto started around that time. And I was fortunate enough to connect with a lot of founders at that time.
Mm, very
But
nice.
if the thing is, if I had kept in touch with them, I would have been in a much better position launching my current startup. But I
Mhm.
didn't, because again, it goes back to that introversion and sort of
Yes.
that overconfidence of like, oh, I can do this by myself situation.
Mhm.
And that's kind of my biggest shortcoming, is not knowing how to network well and not knowing how to maintain those relationships. Um, I do a better job now because as I've learned over the years, and oh, God bless my wife, she's amazing, because she is that type of networking person. And
Mhm.
she's kind of, in our relationship, she's kind of like helped me to know how to build and maintain relationships, right? Um, the funniest thing I always tell people is that she tells me everything. There are often times in the back of my head I was like, "Oh, this is so boring. Why is she telling me this?" But I still listen. Um,
Yeah.
and what I've learned is that a lot of the things that I find boring um, are kind of like the typical things people talk about to maintain relationships. And it's like, okay, note to self: don't skip the boring stuff, or at least what I found boring, right? Because people find it interesting to know more about you, to know, what you're up to, that type of stuff. So I'm making a more conscious effort, again, thanks to my beautiful wife. She's amazing.
Oh, yeah.
um, that helped me learn about this and sort of managing it. I have systems in place where I have notes for when I meet people. I have almost like a CMS, like a customer management system, but
Wow.
for people that I meet, um, to kind of make sure I keep in touch with them. But to be honest, I'm still really, really bad at it. So I take every opportunity I get to learn from others.
Oh, I love that. I love that you've kind of created a process for yourself. Like you figured out like this is a challenge of mine. So to make this work for me, I need to
Mhm.
have a process behind it so I can stay on top of it.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, like, how does that cadence look like with your contacts? Like, do you have like a cadence where you automate it to say, I need to check in with so and so after a certain amount of time? And is it different per contact? Or like I'm curious about that. That's so cool.
So there was once upon a time an entire system like that, very sophisticated in the sense where, like, okay, this isn't, I kind of categorized everyone in my life. It's like, okay, these are
Mhm.
close friends, these are friends, these are people from church whom I need to keep on top of, and make sure we're kind of in each other's lives, participating in each other's lives. These are family members, etc., etc. And then there's like a cadence to, like you said, for example, acquaintances is obviously much more infrequent than contacting my cousins, for example. But as I kind of learned and sort of developed that habit, it I relied less on those like tools, and I guess like more or less organic type of interactions, to a more organic type, where, because now I understand better how to keep in
Yeah.
touch with people.
And
As
it
odd
sounds
as
like
that
your
sounds.
your wife has really taught you a lot. She's been a mentor for you in that regard.
Oh
So,
yeah, she's an absolute rock in my corner, and she's the my best supporter.
oh, I love that. Oh
And
my gosh, I
she'll
feel the
also be
same
the
way.
first one to point out my flaws, so she keeps me grounded.
Same with my husband. He's the same. He's the exact opposite of me in every way. I'm like the dreamer. I'm the one that's always like, we can do this, that, and the other. And he's always like, well, did you think about this?
Hmm.
And have you planned for this worst case scenario? And in the moment, I'm like, oh, I don't want to hear that right now. I want you to
Hmm.
just be my cheerleader. But then after I sit and think about it, I like have just deep gratitude for it because he challenges me. And like the older I get, the more I realize like I need to be challenged. Like give me a
Hmm.
challenge and that's where I'm going to shine. So that's really cool that you've learned how to manage your shortcomings that way. For me, one of the things like with my shortcomings, like networking, it has always been this big scary thing for me too. That
Hmm.
may surprise you because I'm so extroverted, but it is like there's this fear that I have that, you know, just getting out there, this little social anxiety. And so I've actually found for myself, like if I find colleagues, partners who are really good at that, I just like lean on them to just kind of
Hmm.
do it for me, if you will. And so it takes some of the pressure off. So very cool. Okay. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about marketing because you and I are both marketers, you know, and I think this is such a hot topic right now for a lot of small businesses, is as marketing is becoming more complex and as we're facing a recession right now, businesses are asking themselves, how can I promote my business? What do I do? Marketing's an investment, right? So I'd love to learn from you. How have you marketed your businesses in the past and what's worked and what hasn't? And let's start there. And then the next question would be like, what would your recommendation or advice be to any small businesses out there on how you'd market your business now, knowing what you know?
I think two things. Like the gone are the days of, I'll build a real, I'm an artisan. I'm a master at my craft, and the quality speaks for itself. No, the quality, you know, actually no, the quality does speak for itself, but then you need to let people know about the quality. How are you going to let people know, like your
Yeah.
product is quality? Like you can't just go and throw things at people, and
Yeah.
for in current climates, like to grow and maintain a business, you can't often afford slow growth,
Mhm.
which happens by that's oh, the quality speaks for itself. You need to kind of work yourself into the system that is set out for you, and sort of that's out there. So in the past, right, let's say before the internet, what you would rely on is like, get a good storefront. That's
Mhm.
the system that's set up for you. Good storefront. Make sure you're listed in the phone books, and different directories. Make sure you have the flyers out and whatnot. That's the system back then. Now the system that all still exists, and it's great. You should rely on that, but a lot of it is now shifted onto the internet. And how do
Yes.
you leverage the systems in place on the internet to grow your business? It becomes, knowing how to appear on Google search, for example.
Mhm.
Make sure you take advantage of all the other directories, right. In the past, it's just the one, yellow pages, for example, as the
Yes.
directory of businesses, right. And if you're able to hack that and sort of appear, a lot of businesses have like the triple A, right, because then in the
Yes.
phone book is alphabetical, right? If you're triple A, then you
Yes. So
so that's the
true.
first or an early instance of hacking or SEO. You can think of it
Yeah.
as SEO, right? Um,
Yeah.
Now the directory is completely different. There's Google, which is basically a directory. There's Google My Business, right? The
Mhm.
business directories on Maps, etc. And then there are other directories that aren't Google, so you can find these out with quick searches. So that all actually can be encompassed into the broad category of SEO. So
Yes.
SEO, a lot of people, tell everyone it's never too early and it's never too late to start SEO. So if you haven't started, start today.
Oh,
um,
that's such great advice because you're absolutely right. SEO is always going to be there. It's always going to be important for any business to be thinking about and considering. It's like the
exactly.
foundation. So that's really great advice. I love that. No, and I was just going to say, you're doing such great work for clients with managing their presence on Google and doing that. And I think that's such a huge thing that small businesses can take advantage of,
Mhm.
is just to get themselves out there on Google. So I love that too. That's awesome. Mhm.
Yeah, and so now going back to the analogy of the store, right? If
Mhm.
you find a good location, right, then that's your organic listing, right, on Google.
Mhm.
So that's SEO. Um, you find a store that has a lot of foot traffic, a lot of visibility on a busy intersection, for example. But let's say you can't, then what
Mhm.
happens, right? Back then, what you might do is hire a sign flipper, for example, to stand on that busy corner, or buy that billboard, right? That's on that corner, right? The
Mhm.
digital equivalent of that is now running Google Ads. So if you can't,
Mhm.
or like you you're investing in SEO, but you're not appearing at the top, on the search results page, right? That's the equivalent of not being able to buy that prime real estate, that
Yeah.
amazing storefront. Maybe you're tucked away in a different corner of the city, or on the town, or you're just around the corner, right? Maybe less foot traffic, less visibility, but you can hack it by hiring a sign flipper, right, on that corner. And in Google, you can create Google Ads to hack it so that you're now appearing at the very top,
Yeah.
right? So this analogy, I think any small business owner will understand. And these two, I think, are the main ways that you can market your business nowadays, and it's the most accessible, right? You can't often be like, oh, I'll redesign the website.
Yeah.
That's not feasible.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are sort of very tactical, very, you can do this today type
And
of
very
scenarios.
scrappy, right? And I love what you say there too, because with Google Ads, you're able to. So if you're a sign flipper on the street corner, you're trying to capture people that may not even be thinking that they need what you're offering, right? So
Hmm.
you might not even have a captive audience of people who are really intentful about what they're looking for. But with Google Ads, you're literally putting yourself in front of people who are searching for exactly what it is that you're offering to them. So it's so much more effective and targeted because you're bringing in those people that have said and raised their hands in the Google search saying, I need this, rather than spending time trying to draw. And the other thing is that like that landscape of this traditional like brick and mortar has shifted so much
Hmm.
with the e-commerce and the way people are purchasing these days. 70 what it's almost 80% of the purchasing process in B2B. This isn't even in B2C, is now happening online before even talking to a sales rep. And so I
Hmm.
think businesses have to be thinking about, you know, how they can improve their online presence through Google Ads and through creating like what we call a digital self-serve experience through their website and content marketing, because it's the only way that they're going to be able to compete in this new way that people are buying and purchasing. And it also just opens up so much more. There's just so much broader audience than that
Hmm.
standard traditional brick and mortar, because online you can put yourself in front of people all over the country or what have you. So it really just opens up your market. It's still important for you to really niche down, but it gets you in front of more of the right target buyers that you need and want. So
Yeah.
that's really great advice. Awesome. All right. Oh, man. So to close out this has been such a great conversation, Brian. I want to thank you again for coming on and sharing your expertise. It's been wonderful. So just to close us out, I'd love to just, we all know that entrepreneurs, we're going to make mistakes, but like, is there any special vitamin or like special like advice you would give to entrepreneurs on like how can you make those mistakes not catastrophic, right? Like what can you do to prevent like the really bad, terrible mistakes so that you're just like making smaller, more calculated mistakes or risks? What would you say there?
I think, okay, there are a few things that one should understand. If you set up your business correctly, there shouldn't be a mistake so egregious that, you know, you would literally die.
Yeah.
Very few. Okay, there are some. There are very few. Especially if you set up your business correctly. The the main thing that's I think a lot of people are scared of is the idea of losing everything they have.
Mm.
And for me, and this goes back to like risk tolerance, understanding risk, and that stems from my rock climbing like experiences. Is um, a lot of people, if you think about rock climbing, an accident can kill you. That's true. But then an accident can kill you basically in everything you do in your life. So
Mm.
if you kind of rationalize the risk that way, and focus on making sure you control the risk, right? If the rope snaps, that's the same thing as your brake line
Mhm.
breaking on in your car, right? There are percentages involved, but then it doesn't matter what that percentage is. If that happens, you die, right?
Yeah.
When you go and take a calculated risk, then you control what you can control and just let go of the things that you can't control. So,
Mhm.
having said that, the way I rationalize my risk is that I look to my parents. They came to
Mm.
Canada with $100 in their pocket. They
Wow.
got ripped off with a cab ride into the city, spending
Wow.
$20. And then this is like 20, 30 years ago. So it was a lot of money,
Yeah.
20 American to get into the city. And then they spent another like couple bucks to call relatives to make sure, they get
Yeah.
picked up correctly. So they started with $80 and whatever they had in their suitcases. They were basically refugees. If they're able to get to where they are now, with that little. Whatever I have right now, I speak the language. I have a great education.
Yeah.
I have experiences in in the business world here. Whatever happens, I know that I can build from zero again, no problem, right? So
Mm,
that kind of frames everything for me in terms of the risk I'm willing to take. Even if everything goes to zero, I'm okay.
yeah.
We'll just start from scratch. And again, kudos to my wife. She's with me in that because her experience growing up is very similar, right?
Mhm.
So for people who are taking risk and sort of scared about mistakes, the situation is that they should frame the risk in a way that's they can still go out there, right, and know
Mhm.
what the best alternative is. And if they're okay with that alternative, then go ahead.
I love that. And I love the example of your parents, like what tenacity and moxie they had,
Hmm.
frankly. What an example to you. It's kind of like if they can do it, I can do it, right? That's how I feel with my own, like with my father, my grandfather. I look at their example and I say, man, if they could grow a business and they can pick themselves up when they fall down, then I can do it too. So I love that, like looking to the examples of the people around you to kind of help you stay grounded and help you realize that no matter what happens, you're going to figure it out and it's all going to be okay. And don't let that paralyze you from making a decision and taking that risk. So
Yeah.
well, very cool. Oh my gosh, Brian, it has been so wonderful to have you on the show today. I really appreciate all of your insights. Thank you so much for coming on. And where can people reach you if they want to learn more about you, what you do, where can they find you?
I think I'm most active on Twitter,
Mhm.
but that might change in the near future. The best places to find me is on swiftads.io.
Mhm.
You can find my contact information there, and you can definitely try out SwiftAds. It automates your advertising from creating it to monitoring and optimizing it. And if you're not ready for ads, we also have a free directory listing, which helps business owners boost their SEO, and and it's sort of like a PR/SEO role. I'm keeping that a bit under wraps, but then in the near future, there will be a lot of I see a lot of people struggle with PR, so I'm
Mhm.
building something that would help them kind of be better with their PR.
I love it. I love how you're just really listening to customers in the market and what they're telling you. Well, that's awesome. Well, Brian, thank you so much again. So, everyone out there, make sure you connect with Brian. He's just doing such great work for small businesses, helping them with their digital storefronts, right? So, thanks so much, Brian. Hope you have a great day. And that's it. That's all for now. All right.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
Tales of Misadventure is produced, edited, and moderated by Julie Basello with Basello Media. Music by Marcus Way. Special thanks to our amazing guests and the entire DMG Digital team. Visit us at dmgdigital.io to get access to all our podcast interviews and other helpful resources. And if you'd like to get updates on the latest and greatest, please sign up for our email newsletter. We'll see you next time for another episode of Tales of Misadventure. Until then, keep falling forward.